We're here to talk about politics. Tawag doon, since you're a political analyst, so I want to get in siguro a much more educated or a much more informed view ng mga kinagagalit ko sa social media. Yun lang naman yun eh. Para malaman ko kung may tamang justification ba yung galit ko or dapat pa hindi ako magalit or ano ba ang dapat hindi bigyan ng pansin or whatever. Sige, let's start with something because we've been talking about this off-air din yung kay Harry Roque. It's the medyo serious
Di pa ako
talk
nag-warm up. Di pa ako nag-warm up. Medyo nag-escalate. That escalated very fast. Yeah.
It's funny because tawag doon, parang it encapsulates how we view politics here in the Philippines, lalo na from the general audience. And I feel like parang we give a microscopic view on things like these instead of things that are, may energy crisis tayo, may agriculture problems tayo and everything. Alam mo, hindi yun nabibigyan ng pansin, pero guy who hires a supermodel ba? Beauty
Hindi naman.
person?
Nanalo lang
siya?
Some beauty pageant I never heard of.
Nakachamba siya sa isang beauty pageant, I guess, or something. And then now he's like the executive secretary of Harry Roque ng time na yun. So, do you think this is just an isolated case or parang
Actually,
ganyan?
Red, I was thinking, if I'm gonna write a novel, probably one of my central characters will be kind of a composite, and a huge part of that would be Harry Roque. Diba? I mean, if you're gonna do a trilogy, kompletoin mo yung kay Rizal. Diba? No, because if you look at it, he's emblematic. He's somehow a mascot of what many find problematic with Philippine politics.
Yes.
Kasi kung titignan mo yung taon to, sa lahat ng mga government officials I have had interactions with, in his case, we were together in panels, different panels on international media, and debating.
And this was when?
This was in 2018, 2019.
Okay. So human rights lawyer pa siya nito, parang ganun.
No, dito, papunta na siyang sa presidential spokesman na eh. So,
okay.
he was already in an official position, but we were together also when he was still, I don't know, freelancing around or something like that.
Okay.
So, he's actually pretty sharp.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, of course.
He's pretty sharp.
Yeah.
So, in fairness, in terms of intellectual capacity, yung dexterity, yung kanyang ability to adjust, to spin, not bad. Not bad. I'll give it to him. Pina-shut up niya nga ako eh. Excuse me, gumano siya sa akin. Kinat niya ako, diba?
Oh, wow.
Kasi I questioned yung characterization niya ng Philippines, nasabi ko, we're still a fledgling democracy. Kasi hindi pa maayos yung sistema ng hustisya, marami pang kakulang. Excuse me, gumano siya. And then, I tried to, syempre may konting delay yon, Zoom yun, ganon. Biglang parang sabi niya, parang rude daw ako or something like that. Anyway, you can watch it. I posted some parts of it for just entertainment. So I'll give it to him. He's very intellectually dexterous. Magaling siya. I think of all the spokesmen that Duterte had, siya yung pinaka-competent, if I can put it that way. At the same time, look at this person's sociology, no? Middle class, upper middle class, well-educated, embedded dun sa world of human rights. I think he had a very important role at international humanitarian law kind of institutions. I got to know that when I gave a talk in Belgium before on my book on Rise of Duterte. And yet, look at, what has been his trajectory in politics, diba? He starts with attacking Duterte. Then he joins the Duterte administration. Then he endorses the Unity team. I watched that guy during the, Meeting de Avance. I'm among few idiots who went to the Meeting de Avance of both the Lenny camp and the Marcos camp. That was logistically impossible, but I kind of pulled it off, right? And totally different vibes. I posted something about that. And then suddenly, nandun Unity team siya. And then ngayon, bumaliktad naman siya sa Unity team. So the ability of this person, yung kanyang evolutionary skills are very impressive from a biology standpoint.
Parang he feels like parang sobrang, kumbaga, kung gagawa ka ng ideal basketball player for basketball, siya yung ideal
Pwede point guard, pwede center.
all around siya, no? Parang ganun eh. Parang ganun yung
and the sense of impunity and unabashedness. Parang wala lang sa kanya. Like you bring back what he said before, so what, diba? Which, for me, it tells something about our politics. Na truth can be stretched. We live in multiverses of politics.
Oh yeah.
And that normalized na ganitong balimbingan style. Diba? So I think, if there was going to be a trilogy to Rizal, diba? I'm sure si Paterno yung ginamit as the ultimate, diba? As the ultimate, diba? I think he's the 21st century version. If you're looking at the ability to adjust to different political hues and circumstances and all. So on a personal level, probably it's a form of success for him. In fairness, he has come very far in his life. So far that ganito yung mga level ng assistant niya. But, in terms of what he tells about the nature of what's Philippine politics, I think very emblematic siya. And for some people, he represents what's fundamentally wrong with our politics.
It does quite, and ang masaklap doon, it's nothing we've seen, we haven't seen before. Diba? It has happened naman with a lot of people in politics. Pero ito talaga, parang nangyari sa kanya in such a short period of time. And in such a, parang talagang, para talagang, he finds ways to get in the headlines. I have no idea. Parang, for some reason, every time when he was spokes, parating, for some reason, siya parang, na-zoom in ako sa kanya, na-attract ako sa kanya or something, for some reason, and kahit naiinis ako sinasabi niya minsan, I listen to him the next day.
Yeah.
Alam mo yun? So, parang...
Which is like Duterte too. I mean, like,
exactly.
There's some people who just have a skill of making sure they're always in the headline for whatever reason, right? So this is the Paris Hilton, dictum, diba? Any kind of publicity is good publicity, right?
I mean, everybody thought na parang wala na siya because he lost the senatorial race and people kind of like, I think yung kinampihan niya kind of like also threw him under the bus din and everything. But for this one naman, this is what I don't want to say scared of or anything. Pero, yun nga, sabi mo, any kind of publicity is still publicity. We have the next senatorial campaign going on. Do you think it's gonna be something beneficial for him? Or
I'm sure he's angling for some position there and all of that. And there's some sort of base. I think he's trying to mobilize the Duterte base for himself and all. But, looking at, this is likely going to be the most difficult. Ito maging pinakamahirap na Senate race. To the sense that even mga Amy Marcos type or Isko Moreno might not make it if they decide to run.
Wow.
So, sobrang tight ito. You may have 2 Tulfos, you may have 3 Dutertes,
Yes.
although I have doubts with the 3 Duterte option. Nevertheless, sobrang maikpit ito. You have 6 re-electionists, you have, Tito Soto,
Yes.
the Macho Group,
Yes.
Bong Revilla. So, it's going to be a really, really tough Senate race. So, for me, in fairness to him, he also represents, again, I'm being a little bit sociological here, he also represents yung self-reinvention, grittiness, yung madiskarta, yung pagka-madiskarta natin ng mga Pilipino. So you actually wonder if there could be a quote-unquote progressive version of Harry Roque. Someone who could be as nimble, as intelligent, I'll give it to him, his ability to be always relevant and stay relevant in spite of the, tectonic plates, shifting of tectonic plates, but fighting for the other cause. Kasi nakakalungkod. I mean, this person, the level of potential and political acumen he brings is quite something. Although I would say, perhaps one reason also he's a bit struggling in politics is baka na-overdo rin niya. So I think medyo na-sobrang. Because I remember
bilis eh.
even some DDS friends were not very sold on him. Even Duterte was a bit sarcastic on him. So I think he also has to realize, you have talent, pero wag masyadong ginalingan niya masyado, parang gano'n.
Plus, I think parang he came up at a time where everybody has receipts now, what you say. Because you can get videoed and it will last forever when somebody uploads it and everything like that. Pero at the same time, we see people like them get away with, yun nga, balimbing, turncoat, palipat-lipat ng panig and everything. Is it because yung mga Pilipino, ano ba, are we just inherently easily distracted? Lahat ba tayo may ADHD or something?
Okay, so there are 2 explanations. One is historical, one is institutional. But siyempre, simplain natin.
Yes, please.
Una-una, I mean, actually, personally, sa tingin ko si Paterno, for instance, was unfairly treated in history.
Oh, okay.
Because, I'm not saying he was perfect. I have my doubts. But what I'm saying is, he was also emblematic of the situation of the Philippine elite nung nagkaroon tayo ng major shifts in global politics.
I see.
Pabaksak yung Spain, parais ng Amerika, the Germans were knocking at the door, the British and Dutch were there. So it's also emblematic of our impossible situation as a colonial state back in the day and the impossible circumstances we're facing as a revolutionary. Of course, I have more respect for other positions that were made during that time. But nevertheless, Paterno's life and his tragic life in many ways was a reflection of that. Now, yung balimbingan na nakita natin sa 20th and 21st century, may explanation din yan na logical eh. So I'm trying to explain na hindi ito yung nasa DNA ng Pilipino na balimbingan tayo at I don't know, Swedish or supposedly. No, because what happened is, we used to have a 2-party system na inherit natin sa mga Amerikano. Not perfect, problematic, and nakita naman natin sa Taiwan at South Korea, nagsusuntukan yung dalawang party na yan, right? I mean, it's not necessarily...
It's not really good.
Diba? It's not necessarily a, kind of guarantee of
Kahit sa America.
civil. And America papunta na doon. I
yeah.
think we're almost there, di ba? So I'm not saying two-party is perfect and everything is fine, but hindi siya binigyan ng panahon to grow and mature.
Yeah, gets.
Because Marcos comes in, boom, tapos ang usapan, one-man rule essentially.
Yeah.
And then, nung umalis na si Marcos, by that time, wasak na yung party system. And then, in order to kind of create a new system, we introduced a kind of a multi-party, which was essentially any party, no party system.
Yeah.
So, there were no, if titignan mo yung ating saligang batas, there are no guarantees, there are no institutional arrangements to make sure na may pondo, may illegal incentives, ganon. And, related dito yung issue ng dynasty. Walang enabling law sa ating saligang batas laban sa formation of political dynasty. So, nung umalis si Marcos, bumalik lahat ng mga old oligarchs and then medyo bumalik din ang mga Marcoses slowly later on. So, walang organizing principle. Ang gulo, sabog.
Okay.
So, in that sabog system, kung ikaw ang voter, saan ka pupunta? Kasi parang anything goes. Marcoses are not held accountable. This system is a mess. Corazon Aquino facing 8 coup d'etats. Psychologically, you will go for the ones who are known.
Yeah.
So the moment yung mga artista sabi na, wait, wala na mga adult in the room, tatakbo na tayo, people said, let's go for this guy. Mukhang may pakinaman siya sa atin, medyo kilala ko siya. So in a system whereby there's no political party, and you only have political dynasty as your established option, ang mga artista actually ay naging alternative, aging breath of fresh air. Ang problema, yung breath of fresh air nung 1990s, hanggang ngayon nandyan pa rin, di ba?
Yeah.
Which tells you na there's something really broken with our system. Kaya Red, I always say, hindi ko naman sinasabi na hindi naman exceptional mga Pilipino. Marami naman tayong mga kalokohan na exceptional sa atin. But I think sometimes we exaggerate yung ating exceptionalism. Marami sa nangyayari sa ating bayan ay may logical explanation dun sa mga mali ng mga framers ng ating constitution, sa mali ng mga leadership natin, and yung mga tragic historical circumstances. I'll tell you, Red, find me another country who had multiple colonizers throughout centuries like us. With the Spanish, we had the British shortly, and then the Americans. So, yung lalabas pa lang tayo sa Spanish era, may American na naman. Lalabas tayo sa American, may Japanese na naman. Tapos ngayon, may China pa ng threat. So I think we're really a traumatized nation and we're survivors.
Tama.
Madiskarte tayo. But unfortunately, life is not just about surviving. It's about thriving and leveling up. At sa politika natin, hindi natin ginawa yung level up.
Meron din parang, I think, problem din with our identity. Because when the Spaniards found us, we're not Philippines naman eh. Hindi naman tayo Pilipinas noong time na yun, di ba? So when they formed us, and then they left us, Philippines kayo and then gave us basically to the US, parang nahirapan din tayo to cope with our identity and our system and everything, di ba?
Yeah, I mean, we were just a bunch of barangays and small kingdoms. Like, again, this is not to disparage us. I'm sure, Rizal and Isabela de los Reyes have a lot to say on this. Pero, if you look at it, we have no Majapahits, you don't have the Borobodurs or Angkor Wats. You don't have the kind of monarchical palaces you see in Thailand. Puro maliliit lang mga monuments natin
Why is that?
The only monumental figures in Philippine history are Imelda Marcos and Marcos. No, and again, I'm not here to justify just because I'm a Ilocano, but I think there was a logic why logic. I don't agree with how she did it, but I think there was a logic with the whole Maharlika, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
The idea was, nako, pag tumingin ka, tignan mo yung Cambodia, tignan mo yung Thailand, grabe yung mga... Meron din tayo niyan. Gagawa tayo. May ganun eh. So there was an element of reconstructing the past to project a brilliant future and to glorify themselves. Except, of course, it went off the rails, corruption, nepotism. But I kind of see where Imelda was coming from. And so I think the whole Imeldific moment in Philippine history was a kind of a
was like an outside pressure yun.
Yeah, tsaka compensation. Medyo nagko-compensate tayo. Because remember, Imelda, you will see her with the Queen of Jordan.
It's the sports car for the guy with the small...
Exactly. Wala tayong Ferrari. Gawin natin yan. Jeep natin, gawin natin sports car. So again, actually, if you look at a lot of things about our history, once you scratch the surface, there are a lot of logical explanation for what's happening. But we tend to demonize people. We tend to demonize ourselves. We tend to deprecate.
I mean, it's simpler kasi. I think yun din yung naging downfall din natin is because dahil nga, you said, dami nating parties, daming intricacies. The average voting person who already has a lot of problems in their, they wouldn't research or whatever. Kimbis na dati na dalawang panig lang, di ba?
12,
exactly,
not one. 12 senators.
12 senators.
So actually, sometimes, and I blame people of my profession, academics and intellectuals, kasi feel ko minsan masyado natin kinocomplicate ang mga bagay-bagay. At minsan hindi natin naintindihan yung mga realidad on the ground. Or we don't explain things in a passionate way. That's why I do what I do. You know, I do my vlogs, I do my writings, kind of.
Trying to get the word out there.
With my konyotic Tagalog and all of that. I mean, given talaga konyo ako. Although UP, but my point is, pag nakita ng tao yung effort mo, na-appreciate nila. I've met many people who would say, kayo pa si Prof. Darren, ganun. Simple lang pala yung issue na yan. Parang dati akala ko ang complicated. So actually, if you do it in a compassionate way and you explain it logically na hindi ito unique sa Pilipinas, people begin to engage finally in critical thinking. Kasi hindi yung cynical thinking is not critical thinking. Masyado tayong cynical.
Masyado yung tipo, wala nang pag-asa Pilipinas type.
Ang Pinoy, pasaway,
doesn't help anything, yeah. So if we're talking about like political dynasties, related din yung pagboto sa artista and everything, is there like a simple solution to abolish that?
Well, there's never a simple solution. You know, politics is a complex system kasi many moving parts. I mean, you have done computer science, so you're a geeky guy. Rubik's Cube. Remember? You cannot do in one move get all this side. You need multiple moves simultaneously in the right way. Kaya nga mahirap maging first world.
Mahirap.
Halos lahat na naging first world, either colonial powers, or, well, Saudi, yung mga Emirati, mga gano'n.
Talagang naturally
so, konti lang yung mga Singapore na talagang, you know, taos puso.
Singapore is so tiny. It's so
and
easy
it's so
to control.
Tiny. So actually, very few countries are totoong first world, no? And even among the first world, I would say Scandinavia is a different order of magnitude and things. And so, this is where you realize it's so hard to succeed historically. Kaya most nations have failed eh. It's just levels of failure and misery, diba? So I think there's always explanation for some of the shortcomings we're seeing in the system. Now, speaking of how do you fix the system,
at least where do we start?
Yeah,
diba?
You start on multiple fronts.
Okay.
Again, it's parang there's a virus attack on and software, you have to move on multiple fronts. I'm sorry, I'm using for these metaphors kasi baka geeky rin yung mga followers mo. Hindi lang yung mga fans ni Harry Roque. Kasi pinapanood ka ng mami ko. Sabi ko, sino pinapanood mo? Tingnan mo, sasabihin lang na Harry Roque, tumawa na yung crowd. Sabi ko, parang gusto ko rin ng trabahong to. Ayaw ko rin gawin. Magdidigong-digong lang ako. Yeah?
Easy.
I mean, that was good, man. Like, but going back to this, no, you have to move on multiple fronts. One of them is what we're doing right now, using satire, using humor, using marites to actually make complicated issue more understandable, but don't dumb it down.
Of course,
Never dumb. Yun ang pinakayo ko, yung wag mo insultuin yung voters at mga kababayan natin. Unang-una. Even if konyotic lang Tagalog, try to simplify it but not.
We have the advantage now because ngayon ang medium natin is unlimited. Mainstream media, they have channels, right? And it's 24 hours unlimited programming, diba? Less than pa nga. So now we can churn out and people can just watch on their phones. We can churn out as much as an hour of talking about or discourse. We have time to talk about these things. So, kaya maganda talaga. So, I think that's one. So, we talk about it. We make them understand, di ba?
And at the same time, actually, the interesting thing is, you never know who's listening to you. The next thing you know is the president actually listening to you. It's a senator. Some of them text me. Oh, Richard, okay yung episode yun ni ganito. Yeah, you never know, right? I mean, some of my followers on Twitter are former prime ministers. But so, first of all, you actually also never know. And ako, for me, the proudest thing is to realize so grabe yung stretch ng mga nakikinig. Maybe not many people, but actually at least yung diversity of people. So that tells you, nakaka-relate ang maraming tao from different socioeconomic backgrounds and including potentially president or someone in the Malacanang or something like that. So that for me was always encouraging. Now, at the same time, dapat talaga natin pag-usapan kung kailangan natin ng mga amendihan yung ating saligang batas. I think in principle we should be open to it. But dapat maayos under the right circumstances because you might end up throwing out the baby with the bathwater and then Trojan horse pa yan, mamaya kung ano pang gagawin nila, di ba? But in principle, I'm okay to some amendments. For instance, just a very simple example. 6 years, single term, is too long for a bad president.
Tama.
How many examples I can give you?
But
too short
so
also
short
for a good
one.
president. I mean, I think if Ramos or some would even say Pinoy had more time, despite all their imperfections, obviously far from I think we could have avoided an ERAP and could have avoided a Duterte.
Tama.
Imagine if Ramos had 10 years as a prime minister, baka ang susunod, GMA na, pero yung fresh na GMA. Hindi na si ERAP. Di ba? Kasi na-curse din yung ni Arroyo the way she came into power and had to stay in power.
Tama.
The same thing also from Aquino to Duterte. There was a lot of frustration in 15-16. Again, it's logical. Dahil si Pinoy, sa sobrang fiscal probity niya, medyo may pagka-Ilocano sila to make sure na hindi magastos corruption, wala silang infrastructure na ginawa. So nagsimula lang siya ng 2014-15 nung patapos na siya. So imagine, if he withstood 2 years of anger and then by 17-18, medyo nagro-roll out na yung mga... And he could have won over the people.
Exactly.
So, in principle, just one term na 6 years is too long and too short at the same time.
Wow.
And there are other things I can talk about. There are 4 or 5 other provisions. So, I think ang isang problema natin sa ating saligang batas, and this is just the law, not the norms, no, is that masyado siyang reactive to the Marcos era, pero hindi siya applicable dun sa realidad at flexibility na kailangan natin sa 21st century.
Tama.
So again, this is the programming part, right? So there's an engineering aspect we have to also do. And then there's an aspect of norms. Norms are even more important than laws, diba? Kasi norms are about ano acceptable, hindi. So ako, for instance, in political analysis and coverage, when I've covered the Dutertes, I don't take them fully seriously, but just serious enough just in case they mean it. What do I mean by that?
Yeah.
Kasi kung masyado mo silang bigyan ng kahalagaan, lalakas silang lalo. At the same time, if you completely ignore them, you might get blindsided. So the best way to do is, you cover what they say, but you kind of mock it.
Yeah.
Use satire. What do you guys do?
Yeah.
I think that's a good balance. So I think it's also important, the kind of discursive practices we have when we're dealing with these issues. And then the other things. Sa tingin ko, there's even a simpler explanation. As the country gets richer, lumalaki yung middle class. Again, this is a tendency, it's not a law. It's a tendency that people will ask for better environmental rules, less corruption. So actually, sa kasaysayan ng lahat ng mga bansa, whether America or Pilipinas, may dadaan ka talaga na Gilded Age era nung mahirap ka pa eh. And then eventually, there's gonna be a leveling off. So actually, it's almost a law historically. So marami sa mga problema ng corruption na nakikita natin. Actually, again, there's a logical explanation. Ang baba ng sahod ng mga tao sa gobyerno. Ang thin ng mga, kunyari, sino yung mga nagsuscrutinize ng mga kalokohan sa loob ng gobyerno? Binabayaran ba rin sila ng mabuti, di ba? Yeah. Like for instance, Singapore's answer is very simple. Pay them competitively like CEOs, but make them work. I mean, like
so
CEOs.
You attract also the cream of the crop.
So, merit-based, but also competitive rates. Now, obviously, we cannot go Singapore yet. That's level 10. But we can go from level 2 to level 5 or level 6.
Tama.
So, kung tuloy-tuloy lang growth rate natin, I think in 10 years, the Philippines will be a far less corrupt country, cleaner country, better food scene even, diba? Better infrastructure. So a part of this is also just patience and making sure nothing big stupid
But
happens.
are we like at least tiptoeing over there or
Despite our politicians.
Talaga?
If I would have argued that if hindi si Digong ang sumunod, even if si BBM immediately after Pinoy, I think we would have been in far better place pa.
Talaga?
But still, we're the fastest growing in Southeast Asia. Tayo at Vietnam ang naglalabanan. Ang problema naman sa atin is, of course, the growth is not trickling down as much because it's very, well, I have to be careful, it's very dominated by few people and it's by few sectors. Nevertheless, there's hope also to bring investments. I mean, I'm going all around the world giving talks from New Zealand, US, Berlin, among others, about also invest in the Philippines. Also make sure, kasi we're geopolitically important. We're at the middle of, crossroads of regions and all of that. So, Red, what I'm saying here is, the solutions, some of them are almost autopilot, slowly happening. Some of them need direct engineering. Some of them need more passion and they're more discursive and cultural. So you move on multiple fronts. Will not be Sweden and Norway in the next 10 to 20 years. Let's just be honest about that.
We'll be like half a Sweden.
But can we have something like Thailand? Yung kagandahan ng Bangkok. Not politics. Pero tignan mo yung Bangkok. Bangkok was actually medyo pangit, to be honest, 20 years ago. Parang,
nagulat ako. I was there last year.
It's so impressive. Ang sarap ng mga restaurants, Edric. Yung things na yun, kayang gawin within 5 to 10 years. Yung basic infrastructure. We're gonna have a new airport in 10 years. We're gonna have a subway in 5 to 6 years. So, I'm not giving false hope. I'm just saying, papunta na tayo sa exciting part. Not Norway level exciting, pero medyo Bangkok level exciting.
Bangkok is not bad.
And if you're realistic about your expectation, and then you do a bit tweaking here and there, we can accelerate that pace. Diba? So, realistic good hope. Yun ang talagang motto ko sa buhay.
You're saying na, sige, fine, we're kind of like probably crawling towards it or tiptoeing towards it. Parang ganun. Would you say na if we elect better leaders, that would like, put some rocket straps on it and then just like...
Absolutely. So, Red, for instance, I was practically in exile during the time with all the filling the gaps. Back then, I was just there essentially doing damage control. But not in the Harry Roque way. Like, I love the Philippines, please don't dismiss us way, right? And a lot of coverage of the Philippines was, almost poverty porn, right? Like, this is a country of, like, crazy oligarchs and mad... And I felt that's unfair. This was a crazy election. It was polarized. Duterte is a good manipulator, blah, blah, blah. So there's a logical explanation. Don't orientalize Filipinas as weird. I didn't like... Now, my discussion right now...
It's a good word, orientalize.
Ngayon, ang problema ko is baliktad. uy, chill naman kayo kay BBM. Wala pa siyang na-prove. You know, But because he's such a breath of fresh air, ironically, from Duterte, I think suddenly now there's a lot of overexcitement. So ang point ko is, okay, I'm good yun, pero push him also to do the basics.
Okay.
Bring down corruption.
Yes.
Again, not 1 to 10, go 1 to 4, go 4 to 7, right? It's just tweaking realistic step-by-step improvement. So I think with some patience, with some tweaking, and then eventually movement. I mean, you and I are millennials. I suppose both of us are older millennials. Look at the Philippines. In France, in many countries, major democracies, I even dated people who, next thing you know, they're in politics. The millennials were extremely underrepresented in Philippine politics and all. I think parang na-jump na tayo. Like now, the Gen Zs are the big voters. 45 million strong sila. So we're kind of not relevant. And then we also didn't contribute. The only millennials making it to politics are yung mga anak ng dynasties. Right?
Ang impression ko lang sa Gen Z voters, I feel like they're super impressionable. In a good way and in a bad way.
Tito Talks na to.
I've already been canceled.
Medyo Tito Talks. Medyo Tito Talks.
Pero di ba, parang the young voters, which are great because they're aware.
Yes.
Pero I feel like parang they really get influenced by a lot of like headlines because they consume information fast.
Differently,
They don't read books anymore.
Yeah.
They watch 15-second videos. Alam mo yun? So, I think it's up to us then in media to kind of like, point them towards a better direction. Kung hindi man sila ma-convince, at least send them a rabbit hole down, something that would, educate and make them more informed voters. I have a joke that I do right now. So, sa stand-up comedy ko. So, I say, I have a Netflix special, meron na akong movie, and then, sabi ko, ang next logical thing for me is to run for senator. So people will laugh.
Yeah.
And then I tell them, do you think I can run for senator? Yeah. It's like a room of 1,500 people sometimes. And I tell them, if I run for senators next year, will you vote for me? Yes. Gawin sila mga tao. See, that's the problem in the Philippines. That's it. So they're kind of caught in the act din. Parang ganun. So it's a joke, syempre. I doubt half of those people will actually vote for me.
Or registered even, right? Or even registered even,
Actually,
Let's
statistically,
Again, I understand the Tito Talk vibes we're having here now. Ganito, first of all, malaking kasalanan ng generation natin, including many computer scientists, millennial guys in the social media world.
Tama.
We ruined their attention span.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
we destroyed it.
I don't know how I could have done it with the world today. I mean, I did the whole, the Russian novels back in the day. Nung walang electricity ng tatlong araw, may bagyo. That's when I'll bring out the War and Peace. Yeah. Bring out Anna Karenina. That's what the Russian novels did for me. Especially sa Baguio, minsan grabe yung Baguio literally wala kang electricity.
Tama.
Tapos malamig, rainy. Perfect for Russian novel. Good luck doing that right now. So ngayon, makikinig sila, okay, 15 seconds reel, parang yung shortcut ng Anna Karenina. What is the synopsis, right? So I understand them, again, where they're coming from. Because from very young age, hindi sila na-expose into the real world that you and I were exposed, meaning reading books na texture.
Yeah.
So
maraming brownout nung panahon.
Yan, medyo high. Kahit may brownout, may internet pa rin.
Oo nga, no? Tama yung battery.
May battery pa rin. So, pwedeng wala kang tubig, wala kang pero meron ka pa rin pang Facebook. So, naging medyo curse yung ganitong mga privileges na, technological privileges na yan compared sa generations natin, especially the older ones. Having said that though, napansin ko, ang pinaka-problema sa Gen Z is that while they're very aware, in a sense na hindi sila mauto, wala silang prejudice, they're very open, they're very tolerant. Open, in terms of sexuality, identity, they don't have any of the hanash that we have. Wala. Sobrang chill sila. Yeah. So actually, I really love that about them. Yeah. Sobrang I feel comfortable with them. And yun nga, minsan parang kaibigan mo lang sila.
Yeah,
minsan parang
we need to get the
exactly.
Yeah.
But the other thing, the thing kasi sa akin is, medyo cynical yung generation na yan because ito yung generation na lumaki sa climate change, end of the world, the whole Greta kind of rhetoric. Yeah. Again, I
lots
agree
of memento moris everywhere.
And then AI taking away jobs. Somehow it worked for you and me, right? But it was not for sure. Right? Yeah. But the kids right now, they already assume there's not going to be kind of a long-term career.
They're prepared for it.
Parang you're a loser if you have the same job for 3 years. Right? Diba? Parang, what's wrong with you? You are in the same company, right? Diba? Yun ang kung magpakita pa sila, diba? In person. So, they're approaching the world from a different standpoint. So, I think the first psychological barrier there is to give them a reasonable stake in investment in the immediate future and present.
Tama.
Yeah. And I think kaya usually interesting, yung mga Gen Z, ang mga they usually look up to mga Bernie Sanders, mga
Tama.
good lolo types.
Yeah.
Pero hate nila yung millennials and X.
But liberals.
But
no?
liberals,
Usually,
yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Although now you have an interesting development like in France, for instance. They're far right.
Wow.
Yung 29-year-old Italian descent, like nice hair, nice look guy who could be the next prime minister from the far right party of Marine Le Pen. You know how he gets the attention of the youth? He eats candy on TikTok.
Alaga?
Vibes game. Just
Grabe.
vibes. No politics, nothing. Just vibes. Just to make him, parang you can see his freckles, you can see his imperfection, medyo guwapo rin, good looking.
Presence lang, no?
Just vibes.
Yeah.
Just vibes. So, my sense is, first of all, you have to concede to them, they're going to be different. Yung hook will not be the same. They're not going to be impressed with us like with Obama kind of speeches. Do vibes, but eventually make them feel, because one day they're going to be parents too. If not them, some of the other people. One day they have to be presidents. Probably they'll be our presidents one day, right? When we're quite old. So we have a stake in making them having a stake too. So we have to have that intergenerational dialogue na feeling ko hindi nangyayari ngayon. Parang we're just judging each other. So I think we have to really reach out. Have a major serious talk show also with the Gen Zs
Exactly,
and all of that.
yeah. And I think we take advantage of their openness. We take advantage of how they are a sponge in every kind of information they try to take in, kahit be it 20-second video or like a minute video or like an hour-long podcast. I think we need to really, ayoko gamitin yung word na educate, but more of
No, never use that word.
give them like, a starting point of information at least or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a framework of life, a philosophy of life. That's what we can do. I mean, I know patapos na tayo, ang daldal natin para, oh my goodness, this is not good. I mean, it's the coffee or me. But we have to talk about the Duterte Marcos one.
Yes, exactly.
Na-distract tayo dahil kay Harry Roque.
Oh, yun nga.
It's my fault.
I'm going back to that. Duterte versus Marcos. It's like what's happening now if you watch Game of Thrones right now, yung House of the Dragon, it's basically it. Team Black versus Team Green. Ito, Team Red versus Team Green. What's happening? Are they really fighting? Is this just, ano ba to? Parang Spain versus US din ba to dati na kunwari na naglaban sila? Anong nangyayari?
Well, I mean, the House of Dragon, actually, I have a different take. I think yung House of Dragon is actually two well-meaning families walking into trouble because of it, one or two idiots there in between, right?
Exactly.
Yung anak niya,
and yung miscoms.
Yeah, but
between.
actually, good people are in charge in both sides. Ito medyo iba. To be honest, it's a bit different. It's a bit different. Some critics would say, is this Gator versus Crocky situation, right? Is this a kind of a house of Aguila versus house of Tigre, mga ganun.
I think ang concerning din is yung battlefield ba nila, is it gonna be damaging for us or is it gonna be good for us? I don't know.
Well, I think we're going through a period of transition because after Duterte, Philippines will never be the same. Let's just be honest about it. Ang dami mga tabu na broke. Ang dami mga institutional mga presuppositions that completely destroyed yung ginawa sa Supreme Court Justice, minumura yung senador. So, let's just be honest. We're tiptoeing our way out of the ashes of the Duterte era. So, in that period of transition, uncertainty and mistrust is the name of the game. And the reality is that, kung titignan mo, had Duterte been half as sharp as he was in 2015, actually, he could have engineered a succession for either Bongo or Sara. But because he wavered between the two, Marcos came and just ate their lunch and their lunchbox. Because if you look at Marcos Jr., sorry to my kababayan ni Locos, he was actually just number 3. He was behind even Isko Moreno in some of the surveys. Pero dahil sa wishy-washiness and indecision of Duterte, Marcos has come in. So it was always a reluctant tactical alliance from the very beginning. And ito yung sinasabi ni Digong na gumagamit ng he was saying that in 2021 and 2022. So why are we shocked he's doing that now? He has even more reasons to do that. So it was a divorce waiting to happen. Alam mo yung joke na para kang future ex-husband or ex-wife ko. Yung ganon. It was always like that. This was a divorce to happen. And it was a matter of time magkakaroon ng Mexican standoff tong mga dalawang to. But I think Sara Duterte getting out of the cabinet was because she realized she was the boiling frog.
Tama.
Because at the end of the day, while the Dutertes were once upon a time the most popular, the most powerful, whatever, medyo nag-move on ng taong bayan, di ba? And Marcos Jr. now has all the levers of power. The administration has the resources. So they're going to be very strong coming to the midterm elections. And Marcos has international support. Ironically, from Democrats, from Labour government Australia, because of the China issue, obviously. So, gets ni Sara na the more she stays there, the more she's going to get bogged down in margin. So she rather left on her own terms, or at least that's their hope. Now,
Kaysa ma-kick out pa siya doon or some
but if
form.
you look at it, and some of our colleagues here actually got it right, if you look at it, Marcos Jr.'s power is that he's always underestimated. Parating sinasabi na, si Marcos, hindi mo naman
Tama. Yeah.
And that worked to his advantage.
Yeah.
The first moment na he showed this very astute was when hindi niya binigay yung defense secretary position kay Sara.
Yeah.
Doon pa lang naalaman, nag-flex na siya. No, sorry, tapos na election, ako ng presidente ngayon. And then si Arroy didn't become the Speaker of the House. That was already Act 1. I mean, if this were a Shakespearean play, yun na yung Act 1. So it was just a matter of time. And then sa first sona niya, he didn't mention federalism, he didn't mention the drug war, nagalit si Kibuloy sa SMNI. Tapos yung mga loyalist na pro-Marcos, nag-resign pa si Abe, for instance, nag-resign siya dun sa SMNI. So already in the first month or two of Marcos, we saw the seeds of what was about to come. The only question would be, what would be the terms of divorce? Ugly divorce, civil war mode divorce, or kind of a slow motion train wreck divorce.
You think it's gonna be mentioned sa upcoming SONA or
well,
tingin mo merong hints, subtle hints na parang
yes.
we're moving towards one direction?
Marcos is gonna say the usual, no, we're still intact and blah, blah, blah. But he's gonna say also things that says...
But with the resignation of Sara, parang mahirap ng panindigan,
the pretend. No, because the game plan of Marcos is to say, hindi ako may kasalanan, siya umalis. I'm the nice guy.
Okay.
I'm the professional. So he's pushing the burden of proof to the Duterte side. But really things to watch out are after SONA. Will the ICC issue the warrant of arrest?
Yun pa. Oh my God.
Ano yan? Medyo Game of Thrones mini-civil war. Dragons war na yan, di ba? Although I think Marcos has more dragons this time.
Yes.
Kumukonting dragon ng kabila. And then of course, yung investigations about West Philippine Sea, yung mga gentleman's agreement.
Tama.
That could also evolve into something interesting and all. So, that's why, desperado mga Dutertes when they say, tatlong ipapatakbo namin. Whether they do it or not, that just shows they're so desperate. Kasi, nauubusan na sila. For sure, wala sila sa Congress masyado. For sure, sa LGU level, wala wipeout yan.
The Pogo stuff
pa, no? The Pogo stuff that could come back to bite them. Maybe si Harry Roque also. Nasapi na si assistant, di ba?
Oo nga. Nandun yung papeles Nandun daw nilagay sa
radio. But why?
Parang inisip ko parang...
But why?
Ano ba yan? May nag-plant ba nun?
It's just so... Kaya minsan feeling...
Why is it there?
With the whole these Duterte people, Duterte people, what they call them people, di ba? Like, they're just so reckless sometimes. So you feel may pagka-hubris talaga itong mga to. So actually, BBM, if he just ups his courage level and risk appetite a bit more, pwede ipitin itong mga to on many fronts
But I think they're going slow and painful for the other side,
I think slow burn yung last. But the last thing I want to say here is, what about the genuine opposition? Rizon Tiveros and those kinds of people. I think the challenge for them is, pipiliin nila, are they more never Duterte or never Marcos?
Ang hirap, no?
Ang hirap talaga.
It's like a three-way split now. Parang ganun. Kung sa wrestling, triple threat match na to.
Ay, alam mo na. Exactly.
And tawag doon, they should be trying to get more people in sa next election sa Senate. Because I think ang opposition, true opposition, I don't know what it's called anymore.
Genuine opposition.
Genuine opposition is like what, 2-3 people there?
Baka 4 if Franz Castro, and then if Leila de Lima comes in eventually, maybe 5 or something like that. So ang challenge sa kanila is, are they gonna join the admin slate, make a counter slate with independents like Tito Soto? Obviously malabo with the Duterte. So I think the suggestion of some people is, mas threat ang Dutertes kaysa mga Marcoses. I mean, this Marcos, not the previous Marcos. So, baka mas attack muna kayo kay Duterte kaysa kay Marcos. But ang challenge naman dyan is if the Dutertes are somehow eliminated from the race, which is far from given, baka naman magkaroon ng, speaking of constitutional change, baka dyan babalik yung temptation. Because we may not have seen the final version of BBM yet.
Yes,
and he's a very multi-layered... He is very sophisticated. So actually, yun yung challenge ng opposition. If you're opposition, you're wondering, if you help them to bring down this house, baka ikaw yung susunod. Or you kind of sit it out, and then game plan mo is 2028.
Tama.
Because last point, Red, if you want to have some hope for the opposition, assuming yun yung predilection mo, if you're a loyalist, then okay, wala na tayong problema. Maharlika, golden age na tayo. Is usually voters after 2 terms of any leader, even the most popular like India's Modi, they're much more open to go back to yung mga past.
Talaga?
Parang kunyari, nag-break up ka sa jowa mo, kahit sobrang pangit yung breakup mo, nainis sa kanya. Medyo after mga 2 pang jowa, medyo
Na-realize mo na okay pala yun, ganun. Ganun
May
ba?
pagkaganon eh, may pagkaganon.
Even if it's like dictatorship, ganong klaseng...
No. I think in terms of, there's a time for the genuine opposition to come back fresh, right? And say, eto na. Gusto niyan eh, Duterte, Marcos, makana niya yung bigas.
Tama.
Tapos na ba yung krimen? Saan yung 6 months?
Yeah.
Maybe now you want to listen to us who we're explaining to you. But what I want to also lastly say on this point is, kailangan din magkaroon ng mea culpa ang genuine opposition. Because, Red, let's be honest, for everything we can say about Duterte or Marcos, those people would not have come back to power kung hindi nagkakulang din yung mga reformist leaders,
Tama.
yung mga liberals and all of that. So, I think 2025 is a chance for them to reconnect with the people by admitting some of their shortcomings and listening to the people talaga.
It's hard for genuine opposition or yung liberal side ng politics to come back because parang sobrang branded na sila as elitista Philippines na sila eh. Parang ganun yung dating eh. I don't know, like parang ako thinking about it, parang how do you even come back from that, di ba? You've been branded via whether misinformation or propaganda or whatever. Parang ang hirap nang to reform yung well, I guess ito nga, what you're saying, Godzilla versus King Kong ngayon, then baka the genuine opposition might,
Dogecoin ba? Yung mga memes na si Dogecoin.
Dogecoin ka.
Ganun tayo sila. Parang ganun.
Mismo. Sana nga. Sana If we're rounding out the episode. Grabe. We talked about a lot. Kulang yung kape. How about this? Let me throw out like a very hypothetical situation for you. Okay, if another leader was voted, kahit nung panahon ni Duterte or kahit nung panahon ngayon ni BBM Jr., ni Bongbong Marcos, do you think like a Lenny or a Mar or a Grace Poe would have like done a better job, or parang would it accelerate, or miraculously gaganda bigla yung mundo, or hindi naman, di ba? Or anong tingin mong change from what
this is again what I'm saying, the 0 to hero, 1 to 10 mindset.
Imposible.
You're always setting yourself up for disappointment.
Exactly.
If you're thinking we go from 1 to 10. Let's say if Lenny were the president now, for sure magkakaproblema siya sa Kongreso. Kasi sino naman ang laman ng Kongreso?
Exactly.
For sure magkakaproblema siya sa Senado. So I think people have to realize, if you really want transformative change, hindi lang yung presidente dapat maayos.
Tama.
Dapat maayos yung congressman, maayos yung LGU leaders, maayos yung diskurso. You know what I'm saying? So I think you have to make sure na yung expectation mo ay tugma dun sa level of investment and level of reality we have. So again, I think if we can curb our enthusiasm, not get overexcited, and always look for another savior. Oh, si Vico Soto ba next? All of these people,
naghahanap natin ng Messiah, no?
It's never gonna work. It's never gonna work. Don't look for saviors.
Tama.
But look for people who can be part of a bigger movement that can push things in the right direction a bit faster than what's happening right now. If ganun yung level mo, I know it's not as sexy and exciting, but that's the challenge. How can we make gradual positive change exciting and sexy?
Tama.
Because itong 0 to hero, over-promising, you keep on disappointing the voters. Kaya nagkaroon ng backlash eh.
Tama.
After EDSA, di ba, pangako natin sa kanila, maging Sweden na tayo. Anong nakuha natin? Medyo fourth world pa rin, di ba? So, you're asking for trouble. So, ang lesson sa atin is, don't give them heaven when in fact, they may not... Actually, speaking of Maros, he said something interesting. He said, ang problema kasi is, parang tinolang in-offer namin, pero nadalang tao sa dinuguan ng kabilang kampo or something like that. So maybe something between tinola and dinuguan, right? I mean, may konting fried chicken, may konting pansit,
iba-iba.
but not dinuguan level. And then I think we can move in the right direction, right? I think it's getting that Goldilocks level, which is the challenge. I'll just tell you what, no matter how hopeless you feel about our liberals, you remember, many people also were losing hope in Democrats in the US, although they're still in trouble. But worse, in India, yung leader ng opposition nila is mas konyo pa sa akin, half Italian, and he's from the Gandhi family.
What?
Which cannot get more elite than elite. It's like Maro has over
Exactly.
like Araneta over ganun.
Lalo na doon, na sobrang difference.
And that's maputi, like
classes,
medyo at Italian. But, you know what? He made a nationwide tour. He went all across the country, nakinig sa taong bayan, nag-apologize sa shortcomings na, and after 2 election losses, when he even lost it in his, it's like akin
He
losing
lost.
Tarlac. Yeah, he lost in his seat before. This year, in elections, dinoble niya.
Wow.
And now he's seen as the #1 contender for the next elections, as Modi, yung kanilang tatay digong na sobrang galing, is about to retire na in the next term. So, there are examples around the world, or in Thailand, si Pita, halos ka-age lang natin, 42 years old, medyo anak mayaman businessman, and he ran on a very progressive, and he won the most seats. So, what I'm saying is that it's not easy, but it's doable if we learn the right lessons from other problematic countries like India or even Thailand for that matter. Yeah,
and definitely, shows like these, sana makatulong. Thank you so much, Richard. Grabe, that was such it's like a smorgasbord of information right there. Thank you so much. The Medyo serious talk show with Red Ollero is on One News every Tuesday at 9 p.m. So next week, please check it out. If you don't have TV like me, please go to YouTube na lang and check it out. Share it if you like it. Yun. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Richard.
salamat pare.
Thank you.
God bless.